Husband took his ex on a luxury trip to make his wife jealous, not knowing she took a one-way flight to freedom. The iPad slipped from Zariah's hands and hit the table with a dull thud. Her pulse roared in her ears as the screen glowed back at her. A booking confirmation for a honeymoon suite in the Maldives. 2 first-class tickets. Private villa. Couples massage. His name and hers. Her throat burned. The air felt heavy, too thick to breathe. He'd told her they were saving money. He'd told her she was too emotional whenever she questioned his late nights. Now she saw where all the savings went. Luxury love for someone who wasn't her. The sunlight pouring through the kitchen window made everything look normal. The mugs, the toast crumbs, her daughter's drawings on the fridge. But nothing was normal anymore. Zariah's jaw tightened. She wasn't going to scream. Not yet. She just whispered, "Game on, Malcolm." And because some men plan a vacation to feel powerful, and some women quietly plan their freedom. If you've ever hit that breaking point, stay. You'll want to hear how she turned pain into power. Zariah stood frozen in the kitchen. The morning sun poured through the blinds, touching the dishes and coffee mugs like the world hadn't just cracked open. Her reflection shimmered in the glass cabinet, a woman who suddenly looked like a stranger. From the living room, a small voice called out, "Mom, where's my backpack?" Amari's laughter echoed, unaware that her mother's chest felt hollow. Zariah blinked hard, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "In a second, baby," she said softly. Her voice trembled. She picked up the iPad again, the edges still warm. Her fingers shook. The confirmation email waited, mocking her with its cheerful tone. Luxury villa, romantic dinner, 2 adults. She shut it quickly, pressing her hand to her heart as if she could trap the pain inside. For a moment, the silence felt heavier than the betrayal. She had stood in that same kitchen making his coffee every morning, believing love meant devotion. Now she realized devotion had made her blind. Outside, a neighbor watered her lawn. Normal life went on. But for Zariah, everything ordinary had turned into proof of her mistake. Her mind drifted backward. 5 years of marriage played like a slideshow she never asked to see. The first apartment in downtown Atlanta, cheap furniture, too small for their dreams. She remembered Malcolm's laugh, his promises. "We're building something big, Z. You'll see, our empire." Back then, she believed him. She quit her design job, told herself love meant teamwork. He worked late. She waited, cooked, cleaned, smiled. "Once his career settles," she used to whisper, "we'll travel, we'll live." But the years blurred together. He grew sharper, busier, richer, and she grew smaller. Her sketches gathered dust. Her confidence faded into laundry piles and grocery lists. He started dressing better. She started doubting herself. And now, in this quiet kitchen, she finally saw the cruel irony. The empire they built had only one throne. Zariah stood straighter, letting the truth sting. The version of her who'd believed in forever was gone. What remained was the woman ready to reclaim what she lost. She unlocked the iPad again, not to torture herself but to confirm the truth. A message from Malcolm flashed across the thread. "This will drive Zariah crazy." Her stomach turned, but then something strange happened. She laughed. A short, dry sound, almost foreign to her ears. "He has no idea," she whispered. Scrolling deeper, she read more lines. "Can't wait to be with someone who actually appreciates luxury. He deserves a woman who understands him," Vanessa replied with a heart emoji. Zariah stared at the screen until her eyes blurred. She should have felt destroyed. Instead, a calm began to replace the shock. He wanted her angry, jealous, emotional. He wanted control, even from thousands of miles away. But this time, he'd miscalculated. For years, she had made herself smaller so he could feel tall. Now, every cruel word he sent only built her backbone stronger. She locked the iPad, exhaled slowly, and whispered, "Let's see how crazy I can get." 3 weeks earlier, Malcolm had come home grinning, suitcase already half-packed. "Big conference in Singapore," he'd said. "Huge opportunity. I'll be gone 10 days. She remembered the excitement in his voice. Too bright, too rehearsed. At the time, she'd smiled and kissed his cheek. "Do great, babe," she'd said. "We'll miss you." Now, she replayed that moment in her head and almost laughed. Singapore. The perfect lie for a man who thought he was smarter than everyone else. The screenshots told another story. Maldives, not Singapore. A lover's escape disguised as business. Zariah sat down, steadying her breath. The pain was still there, sharp and raw. But beneath it, something colder took root. Focus. If Malcolm wanted to play games, she'd learn the rules and win quietly. He'd booked his fantasy trip. She'd start planning her reality. One ticket for him and his past. One escape for her and her future. That night, Malcolm slept facing the wall. His phone screen lit up every few minutes. Zariah kept her eyes closed, pretending to breathe evenly. The glow of the phone cast thin lines of light across the sheets. He typed quickly, then paused, grinning to himself. She caught a flash of the message. Vanessa's name. A heart emoji. He laughed under his breath. Zariah felt her pulse hammer against her ribs. Her hands curled under the blanket, nails pressing into her palms. It wasn't heartbreak this time. It was fury. She could smell his cologne, hear the tiny clicks of his thumbs on glass. The sound made her skin crawl. For years, she had listened to those same hands praise her designs, touch her hair, promise forever. Now they texted another woman inches away from her. When he finally turned off the screen and drifted into sleep, she stared at the ceiling. Her mind whispered the truth she had ignored for too long. Love didn't die tonight. Respect did. And when respect is gone, the heart doesn't break. It hardens. Morning came, soft and cruel. Malcolm left early, his scent still hanging in the room. Zariah sat at the dining table with her laptop open. She scrolled through their bank account, eyes narrowing at the numbers. Transfers, withdrawals, hidden purchases, all from their savings. He had lectured her for years about money. "Z, you don't get business. You spend too much on small things." He'd made her feel guilty for buying shoes, for taking Amari to a movie. Now she saw hotel deposits, luxury dinners, jewelry she'd never received. The screen blurred as her chest tightened. She whispered, "He used my trust like a credit card." The realization burned through her veins. Every lie had a price tag, and she had paid for all of it. Her jaw clenched. The woman who used to apologize for asking questions was gone. The new one was doing the math and planning her next move. By noon, she dialed Rel. It had been months since they last talked. Life, distance, and Malcolm's control had made sure of that. "Girl, it's me," Zariah said quietly. Relly's voice came warm and steady. "I knew you'd call. What happened?" Zariah hesitated, then the words poured out. The trip, the messages, the money. There was silence for a beat, then Rella's tone sharpened. "Stop surviving, Z. Start living." The phrase hit like a slap and a hug all at once. Zariah exhaled, realizing how long she'd been holding her breath. She had been surviving under the illusion of stability. Now it was time to breathe again. Relle promised to help her find a good lawyer. "Don't act crazy. Act smart," she said. "He expects your tears. Give him strategy instead." For the first time in days, Zariah smiled. Her anger was turning into clarity, and clarity was dangerous. The next morning, Zariah met Tasha Williams, the attorney Rel recommended. Tasha's office was small, lined with degrees and quiet confidence. Zariah told her everything: the affair, the money, the plan disguised as a business trip. Tasha nodded slowly. "We don't cry over betrayal here. We document it." She handed Zariah a notepad. "Every receipt, every transfer, every email, collect it." Zariah wrote the first note with shaking hands. Tasha leaned forward. "You think he's powerful, but men like him collapse the moment you stop playing nice." It wasn't revenge she wanted. It was fairness. Still, the word collapse gave her a small spark of satisfaction. They spent an hour mapping the steps. Secure her funds. Open a private account. Get copies of all records. As she left the office, the air felt lighter. For the first time, the word freedom didn't sound impossible. It sounded close. That evening, Zariah opened the old folder her mother had left her, the inheritance she'd never touched. She stared at the numbers, then whispered, "Time to protect what's mine." With steady fingers, she transferred the money into her new account. Each click felt like a piece of her heart locking back into place. For years, she'd depended on Malcolm to handle everything: bills, taxes, decisions. Now, she was taking it all back, dollar by dollar. When the confirmation appeared on the screen, she smiled for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a loud victory. It was quiet, steady, deliberate. The house was silent except for the hum of the fridge and Amari's soft breathing from the next room. Zariah whispered, "This one's for us, baby." In that moment, she realized freedom didn't always start with running away. Sometimes it started with a password change and the courage to press transfer. Later that night, Zariah went back through Malcolm's files. Hidden in a folder labeled Consulting Expenses, she found the address: a downtown apartment lease under his name. Her chest tightened as she scrolled through the document. It wasn't work-related. It was a luxury space, fully furnished, paid for in cash. Rent transfers every month from their joint account. She sat still for a long time, staring at the address. No tears this time. No shaking. Only a cold calm that came when pain burned itself out. So that's where he went on his late nights. That's where he became a man without a wife or daughter. Zariah saved the file and closed the laptop. The sound of the click echoed louder than it should have. He thought she'd never look. He thought she'd always choose comfort over truth, but comfort was gone. All that remained was clarity. Sharp, steady, and cold. And once a woman sees the truth, she can never unsee it. The next morning, Malcolm breezed through the kitchen, suitcase in hand. His cologne filled the air before his words did. "Don't spend too much while I'm gone," he said, smiling without looking at her. Zariah wiped the counter slowly. "Don't worry," she replied. "I won't." He laughed, thinking she was joking. She smiled back, but her eyes were unreadable. Inside, her mind ticked through every detail. Passwords changed, files backed up, funds moved. He talked about flights and meetings while she silently calculated her exit. When he kissed her cheek, she didn't flinch. She was done giving reactions he didn't deserve. He adjusted his tie in the reflection of the fridge. "Keep the house tidy," he said. "I'll keep everything tidy," she whispered under her breath. Malcolm walked out the door, completely unaware. Every step he took away from her made her stronger. As soon as the car pulled out of the driveway, Zariah moved. She opened the closet and began folding clothes into boxes. Each piece she packed felt like a confession she no longer owed him. Relay arrived 20 minutes later with her truck. Neither woman spoke much. They didn't need to. They carried boxes in silence, labeled Amari, Memories, Mine. Relay stacked them in her garage for safekeeping. When they were done, sweat beaded on their foreheads. Relay looked at her friend. "You sure you're ready?" Zariah nodded. "I've been ready for years." She walked through the empty rooms, touching the furniture, the walls. The home, once filled with laughter, now felt like a cage. She paused by the doorway, taking a deep breath. Every box she had packed was a promise. She would never live small again. That evening, Zariah tucked Amari into bed. The little girl hugged her tight, eyes sleepy. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked softly. Zariah brushed her hair back. "Yeah, baby. Mommy's just thinking." Her smile trembled, but her voice stayed gentle. Amari grinned and whispered, "You think too much." Zariah laughed quietly. "Maybe, but it helps me be brave." After Amari fell asleep, Zariah sat on the floor beside the bed. She watched her daughter breathe, small chest rising and falling. For the first time, the fear didn't feel like weakness. It felt like fuel, because this wasn't only about betrayal anymore. It was about Amari growing up knowing her mother never stayed broken, that she chose peace over pretense. Zariah kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "We're almost free, baby. Almost." The next morning, Malcolm rolled his suitcase to the door. He looked good. Crisp shirt, polished shoes, charm rehearsed. He leaned down, brushed her cheek with a kiss. "Try not to miss me too much," he said. Zariah's lips curved into the smallest smile. "I won't," she answered, steady and calm. He chuckled, assuming it was playful. She watched him walk to the car, sunlight flashing across his wedding ring. For a second, she almost pitied him. Almost. When the engine faded down the street, the silence settled heavy and clean. Zariah stood still, her heartbeat steady for the first time in months. No tears, no anger, only release. She whispered to herself, "He's gone." Not with sadness, but with relief. The goodbye had already happened long before today. This was just the door closing on a story she'd already outgrown. The door clicked shut behind him. For a long moment, Zariah just stood there, breathing. Then she reached for her phone and dialed Rella. "He's gone," she whispered. On the other end, silence. Then a sharp inhale. "Oh my God," Rel said, her voice trembling. "You did it." Zariah laughed, half sobbing, half choking on relief. And then Rel started laughing too. Two women, crying, laughing, shaking, as the weight finally slid off Zariah's chest. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt empty, yes, but also new, like air could move freely again. "You're free now," Relly said. Zariah wiped her cheeks. "Not yet," she answered, "but close." They stayed on the line, silent but connected, breathing together. Freedom wasn't loud. It was quiet, fragile, sacred. And tonight, Zariah held it in her hands for the first time. Morning sunlight poured through the kitchen. Zariah stood by the counter, suitcase beside her, coffee brewing one last time. She placed a single envelope next to the machine. The divorce papers. His name printed clearly at the top. Her signature neat, steady, final. No note, no explanation. He didn't deserve her words. Just the truth, written in legal ink. Amari came down the stairs, rubbing her eyes. "Are we really going, Mom?" Zariah smiled softly. "Yeah, baby, we are." They loaded the car, every box already gone to Rel's garage. The house looked too clean, too quiet. Zariah took one last look inside. He'd left her with emptiness. She was leaving him with consequences. As she locked the door, she whispered, "Enjoy your coffee, Malcolm." Then she turned away, never looking back. The plane engines roared beneath them. Zariah's fingers tightened around Amari's small hand as the world tilted upward. Clouds rose beneath the window, soft and endless. Atlanta shrank into a blur of light and memory. Amari pressed her nose to the glass. "Mom, are we running away?" Zariah smiled faintly, eyes still on the clouds. "No, sweetheart. We're not running away. We're running toward." Amari didn't quite understand, but she smiled anyway. Zariah watched her daughter's reflection. Free, innocent, unbroken. For the first time, there was no fear about what came next. No dread about bills, lies, or whispered blame. Just air, open and clean. The seatbelt sign blinked off. Zariah leaned back, closing her eyes. She whispered to herself, "This is what freedom sounds like." When the plane landed in Charleston, the evening sky was streaked with gold. Zariah stepped off, heart racing. Part fear, part relief. Then she heard her name. "Z!" Simone rushed forward, wrapping her in a hug that felt like home. Zariah buried her face in her sister's shoulder and finally let the tears fall. "Welcome home," Simone whispered. Zariah laughed through her crying. "I can't believe I did it." "You did more than that," Simone said. "You came back to yourself." Amari clung to Simone's waist, smiling shyly. Within minutes, the tension in Zariah's body began to melt. The drive from the airport was quiet, filled with the scent of salt air and pine. Charleston looked like peace. Soft colors, slow streets, space to breathe. As they pulled into Simone's driveway, Zariah whispered, "This time, I'm staying free." Thousands of miles away, the ocean glimmered outside a glass villa. Malcolm lay on a beach chair, drink in hand, phone buzzing beside him. He picked it up casually, until he saw the notification. Home security alert. Motion detected. He opened the feed. Movers, boxes, Relly's truck, and then Zariah, carrying her suitcase out of the house. His jaw dropped. "What the?" He scrambled upright, panic rising. Vanessa looked up from her book. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. He rewound the footage. Divorce papers propped against the coffee machine. The color drained from his face. "No," he muttered. "She wouldn't." But she did. And as he stared at the screen, miles from home, his luxury escape turned into a cage. Zariah had taken his control and replaced it with silence, the kind that echoed louder than any revenge ever could. The message came just after midnight. Malcolm's name lit up her screen. "You can't take our daughter." Zariah stared at the words, calm as still water. For a moment she imagined his voice, the same tone he'd used to control, to guilt, to twist her silence into obedience. Not anymore. She typed slowly, deliberately. "Watch me." She hit send, locked the phone, and placed it face down. No shaking hands, no second guessing. The next buzz went unanswered, and the one after that. Because Zariah finally understood. Power wasn't about who shouted louder. It was about who walked away first. Across the ocean, Malcolm raged into the void of his own making. But in Charleston, Zariah slept soundly for the first time in years. Her daughter safe beside her, her future untouched by his noise. She didn't need to prove herself anymore. She just needed to keep moving forward. A week later, Zariah sat in the lobby of an architecture firm downtown. Nervous energy buzzed under her skin, but she kept her chin high. The hiring manager, a sharp woman named Patricia, greeted her with a smile. "I've seen your portfolio," she said. "We need your fire." Zariah blinked, surprised. "My fire?" Patricia nodded. "You've been out of the field for years, but your designs still have something alive in them. You see emotion in structure." For a moment, Zariah's throat tightened. No one had said something like that to her in years. They talked about projects, ideas, motherhood, resilience. By the end of the meeting, Patricia extended her hand. "Welcome back, Zariah. We could use someone like you." Outside, sunlight warmed her face. For the first time, she felt like more than someone's wife, more than someone's mistake. She was herself again, and the world was finally ready for her return. It didn't take long for Malcolm to strike back. He filed for full custody, claiming Zariah was unstable, impulsive, unfit. Tasha called her the next morning. "He wants a war," she said, "so we'll give him one, legally." In court, Malcolm sat stiff in his tailored suit. But when Tasha presented the evidence, the screenshots, the financial records, the messages from Vanessa, his expression began to crack. The judge flipped through the documents, frowning. "Mr. Reed, you lied about your travel, misused marital funds, and endangered emotional stability within your home. You expect this court to trust your judgment as a father?" Malcolm's jaw clenched. He said nothing. Zariah kept her gaze forward, calm and composed. She didn't need to win with anger. The truth was enough. By the time the hearing ended, his lawyer looked defeated. Outside the courtroom, Tasha smiled. "He underestimated you," she said. Zariah's reply was simple. "He always did." The court ruling came 2 weeks later. Zariah won primary custody. Malcolm was ordered into therapy and parenting classes before any visitation. He sat alone in his lawyer's office afterward, staring at the wall. The same hands that once typed love messages to Vanessa now trembled. He had thought he could play God with people's hearts. Now he was just a man with no home, no family, no one left to lie to. Across town, Zariah signed the final papers with steady hands. Her name stood alone. No hyphen, no shadow, just Zariah Monroe. Malcolm poured himself a drink that night, staring at his reflection in the glass. He didn't see charm or success anymore, just consequences. He whispered into the silence, "She really left." But no one was there to answer. A month later, Zariah and Amari stood in front of a small apartment near the beach. The walls were white, the floors creaked, and the sea air smelled like new beginnings. Amari looked around, wrinkling her nose. "It's not fancy." Zariah smiled. "No, baby, but it's ours." They unpacked slowly. A few boxes, a few dreams. Zaria hung a drawing Amari made on the fridge. She placed her laptop on the kitchen table, her new work desk. As the evening light spilled through the window, she brewed tea and watched her daughter dance to music from a tiny speaker. There was no grand mansion, no expensive furniture, no polished lies. Just peace. Zariah exhaled, soft and full. Freedom didn't glitter. It glowed. And in that quiet apartment by the sea, she finally felt rich again. Weeks passed, and Zariah found her rhythm again. At the architecture firm, deadlines, meetings, and sketches filled her days, the kind of chaos that made her feel alive. One afternoon, the client reviewing her latest design looked up, eyes bright. "This is stunning," he said. "It feels like you built emotion into the walls." Zariah smiled, a quiet pride blooming in her chest. "Maybe I've lived 3 lives," she said softly. "The woman I was before him, the one who survived him, and the one who finally remembered who she was." The room went still for a moment. Even Patricia, her manager, smiled. "Then welcome to your 3rd life." After work, Zariah walked along the beach near her apartment, shoes in hand. The wind tugged at her hair, salt brushed her lips. Every wave that broke against the shore seemed to say the same thing. You made it. And she had. Not just as an architect rebuilding spaces, but as a woman rebuilding herself. A few evenings later, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, until she heard the voice. "Zariah, it's Eleanor. Malcolm's mother." Zariah hesitated. "Mrs. Reed?" "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," Eleanor said, voice shaking, "for not seeing what was happening, for defending him when I shouldn't have." Zariah sat down, heart softening. "None of us deserved that," she said quietly. "He fooled everyone, even himself." There was silence, then Eleanor sighed. "You've given my granddaughter a better life. Thank you for that." Zariah blinked back tears. "She deserves peace. We both do." When the call ended, Zariah didn't feel anger or victory, only release. Forgiveness didn't erase the past. It simply stopped it from owning her. That night, she slept deeply, unchained from resentment at last. Spring sunlight spilled through the windows of a new house, small, bright, and full of promise. Zariah held the keys in her hand, smiling like she hadn't in years. Amari ran from room to room, her laughter echoing through the empty walls. "Mom, this one's mine," she shouted, pointing to a sunlit bedroom. Zariah laughed. "Then it's yours, baby." They painted the walls soft lilac, hung drawings and dream catchers, and planted herbs on the porch. At sunset, they stood in the backyard, bare feet on cool grass. "This is what freedom looks like," Zariah said. Amari nodded seriously. "And it smells like paint and cookies." They laughed until they cried. This wasn't luxury. It was something richer. Safety, warmth, home. And for Zariah, that was the most beautiful architecture she'd ever created. Months later, she heard a knock at her door. When she opened it, Malcolm stood there, thinner, tired, different. "Zariah," he said softly, "I came to apologize for everything." She didn't invite him in. He looked at the ground. "I know I broke us. I know I hurt you. I'm trying to change." Zariah studied his face, the man she once loved, the stranger he'd become. "I forgive you," she said, voice calm. He looked up, hope flickering. "But forgiveness isn't return," she continued. "It's release." Malcolm nodded, tears gathering. "I understand." For the first time, he really did. When he walked away, she didn't feel anger, only peace. Some doors don't close with a slam. Some close gently, finally, forever. A year later, Charleston glowed under the afternoon sun. Zariah and Amari walked along the beach, waves brushing their ankles. Amari pointed to the sky. "Look, Mom, paradise." Zariah smiled, heart full. She whispered, almost to herself, "He took his ex to paradise to make me jealous. I took my daughter to freedom, and found paradise inside myself." They stopped to watch the horizon. The sea stretched endlessly, bright and alive, just like their future. Freedom wasn't loud or showy. It was steady, earned, sacred. It was the richest luxury of all. As the tide rolled in, Zariah turned to the camera of life, her voice soft but certain. "If you've rebuilt yourself after being broken, share this story. Someone out there needs to believe they can, too." And as the sun dipped low, her laughter carried over the water, the sound of a woman finally, beautifully, free.